Cleveland in the mind of the grinder. Talk about the name on the map. I got products on products, how I make my profit, turn my vision to the million. This is how we locked in, flip the hustle, reinvest, watch how I hit the top. Every move that I'm making, then I'm making money, money to the motion. Cashed out, now I'm on the grind, cause I gotta make something real, no decline. Cashed out, no decline, never get no decline. ABI security in the world alert, with the blockchain bank so alert, so the money convert. Gotta get that money going plain sight, gotta build it up like I build my game. Show them how you earn, then you gotta build a real wealth, build some real wealth. What you gotta let burn when you playing crypto, gotta have a burn wall when you're using crypto. I got products and products, yeah, I gotta get it like it's profits, how I turn my million to a vision. Cause we locked in, flipped it to a hustle, invest how we gotta flip it to the top. Every move we make, then we make it like the money in the motion. How we gotta do it, put the money to the motion. It's products and products, it's products and products. Cause we gotta make a profit, turn the vision to millions. Yeah, I built it from nothing, now I see it all function. Akashic the knowledge, AVR the compass. Yeah, I built it from nothing, now I see it all function. Akashic the knowledge, AVR the compass. Hop into the cockpit.
Get a personalized rate based on how your family drives with Drive My Way. American Family Insurance.
Victory, it tastes so great, but God could only judge my fate. Victory, it tastes so great, but God could only judge my fate. How you wanna do this? How you wanna do this? Victory, it tastes so great, but God could only judge my fate. Try my hardest, never hesitate. Show the world love, love and create. I create my own fate. You could try to hate, but I guarantee you as I fade away and roll the I'm just rolling joints and making points. I'm just rolling joints and making points. And every hit I take, I'm talking shit. Wake up. Open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes, just open your eyes. The world's gotta wake up. Open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes. The world's gotta wake up. Stop all this makeup, the fake news, the fake lies. The world's gotta wake up. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. The world's gotta wake up. The world's gotta wake up. Open your eyes. Every day, all I hear is propaganda. All they try to do is feed us fear. Every day, a boy cried wolf, world filled with sheep. All I wanna say is the world's all asleep. The world's gotta wake up, open their eyes. The world's gotta wake up and open their eyes. They all want the truth, but they never really listen. Pretend they want wisdom, but they still never listen. They said they want the wisdom, but they still never listen. They said they want the wisdom, but they still never listen. They said they want the knowledge, but they still never listen. Open your eyes, just open your eyes. The world's gotta wake up, open your eyes. The world's gotta wake up, so wake up. Wake up and open them eyes. Wake up and open them eyes. Stop all this makeup, the lies. The media, they just lie. You gotta wake up and open them eyes. Open them eyes. Wake up. You can't be a sheep. You can't be asleep. Open your eyes and wake up the world.
The Bush Guide, cold and smooth survival skills.
My watch is broken.
You could tell time by measuring the sun's distance from the horizon. Looks like happy hour. Bush. Head for the mountains.
The moment she stepped in, she had all the power.
This investigation is sponsored by Wondrium. Angelology is the study of angels, a class of supernatural beings thought to act as the intermediaries between God and humanity. And for the most part, they're benevolent creatures, but also extremely complex and sometimes quite scary. In today's investigation, we'll be focusing specifically on Christian angelology from a biblically accurate perspective. And yes, we're gonna get obsessively detailed with it. While many do believe in the literal existence of these beings, you don't have to be a Christian or even religious to appreciate this deep, fascinating lore. Today, we'll discover a number of alien-like angelic species, some of which are rarely talked about, and we'll break into their inner workings, from the hierarchy of heaven to the way angels actually think and behave. And of course, we'll assess the very limits of their incredible powers. All of this is guaranteed to throw
You guys like watching this?
any angelic preconceptions you had out the church window. But be warned, it'll get downright bizarre at points, and you'll come face to face with some of the oldest, still unsolved mysteries in history. Hey fellow seekers, welcome. I'm Mr. Mythos. If you're a fan of strange and ancient mysteries with research so deep you're guaranteed to fall down the rabbit hole, you're in the right place. I humbly ask you, give this video a like and ding notifications bell so you don't miss any of the rare info we'll be digging into every video. And if you love it, don't forget to share this video with a friend. But before we dive in, I want to share with you a bit of an origin story of how I came to be Mr. Mythos. And I'm serious when I say it goes back to today's sponsor, Wondrium. Back in 2012, Wondrium used to be called The Great Courses, and they offered video lectures from the world's foremost experts on the coolest topics from history, religion,
All of that. I think the revelations of the Heptarchy material, along with some of the probable preparation of some of it was just enough and to jump start things to the next level. And that next level was the Liber Loci rituals. Regardless of all that, with some creativity, especially knowing about the previous practice of Solomonic grimoire magic through this period, it is.
This is a map of the spiritual world according to the Bible. Most of us understand the physical world, I hope. But today we're diving headfirst into the depths of the spiritual world. From Titan angels who rain judgment on humanity to demons who rule entire geographical nations, all the way to entire spiritual dimensions, each different from one another, created by God to house specific beings. We as Christians think things are so simple now that Jesus has died for our sins, but Paul says that we are at war, and the spiritual world is teeming with power, both celestial and demonic. There's entire hierarchies of demons led by the great deceiver himself. Then there's the angelic hosts who were created for a very unique role. Warning, this video isn't for everyone. But if you want to go beyond what you hear at church and dive deeper into the spiritual world through God's word, this one's for you. Listen to it at work or in the car or even while you sleep. Just make sure that you're ready because this stuff is absolutely mind-blowing. In exchange for your subscription, I promise that my team and I will strive to deliver the highest quality biblical content possible. We've recently hired a bunch of new guys just to make these videos as good as we possibly can. So if you enjoy this video and find it valuable for the kingdom, please subscribe and join us on the journey against darkness. But we have a bit of a problem. The spiritual world is so extremely overwhelming for a guy like me, so what I've done is separate our exploration into 3 phases. First, we'll explore the spiritual dimensions that make up the fabric of this reality. Common ones like heaven and hell everyone knows, as well as some more mysterious locations such as the abyss. Next, we'll look at the beings who occupy the spiritual realms, starting with angels and ending with demons.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call.
I'll be right back.
Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator.
Book sharing app.
A workflow manager that
tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Trash duty schedule.
Since no one seems to care.
just built a
I just created a goal tracking system.
We built the same thing, didn't we?
Yep.
Can this thing manage contact?
Is the SOC 2 compliant?
I want to animate this graph.
Create a party planner.
Profesor de Español.
An inter-office dating app. For dogs. For office dogs. You know what I mean?
This is a guide map to the spiritual realm. Most Christians think the spiritual realm looks like this. 2 options, heaven or hell, but it's actually more like this. The first spiritual realm is known as Sheol in Hebrew and Hades in Greek. The word Sheol means the land of the dead, and it's quite a lot more fascinating than I initially thought. You can think of Sheol as an enormous holding cell for all the dead who are awaiting resurrection and judgment. But the interesting thing about Sheol is that it's divided into 2 distinct realms. In the Old Testament, every single person who died went to Sheol, but which realm of Sheol they ended up in depended on what choice they made on Earth. But before we go any further in the afterlife, we need to understand the truth about our own planet, because there's spiritual beings here that we share this space with, who will also share eternity with. And it's important we meet them now. Now, you might think Earth is home to humanity alone, but that's not actually true. We share this planet with at least 2 other groups of invisible aliens. Okay, sounds crazy, but stay with me. Both alien groups didn't originate here, but came here for different reasons. The first is a race of demons, fallen angels who were cast down from heaven and forced to roam the earth. The second are a race of angels, ministering spirits sent by God to visit Earth and to carry out certain missions and deliver messages. Demons are servants of Satan, but they too only seem to act with God's permission. Uniquely, demons also seem to inhabit people or places, but they're not stuck there, as some demons are sent to one of our other 7 realms called the Abyss. But we're going to explore the Abyss a little bit later in this video. Some of the more prominent spiritual beings on both sides are assigned a person, a community, or even a nation to rule over. The higher rulers are called princes. But one of these beings rose to become the prince of something much greater. The entirety of the earth was under his power and sway. It's the same being who plummeted the world into sin and darkness in the Garden of Eden, the devil himself, Satan, the serpent, the great dragon. In the Old Testament, if a person died, they'd be sent to one of these 2 realms within Sheol. Those who had faith in the God of Israel were sent to the realm Jesus calls Abraham's side, described as a place of comfort. Those who didn't trust in God were sent to a place simply called torment. Torment is a realm within Sheol described as a fiery agony where no relief is provided, not so much as a droplet of water on a dried tongue. Not a very nice experience, is it? Don't worry though, there are far worse realms on our list today that we are going to explore. A great chasm separates the 2 places as the inhabitants await their ultimate sentence. These are the realms of Sheol. But our next spiritual realm is something quite different. Our third spiritual realm is called Paradise, and here's where most people's understanding of the afterlife completely falls apart. Paradise is a place mentioned by both Jesus and Paul in Scripture. Jesus, of course, says it to the repentant thief on the cross, and Paul mentions being called up to paradise, also naming it the third heaven. But the realm called Paradise isn't as simple as we think it is. The reason Paradise is such a complex realm is because it has 3 different forms throughout the Bible. The first was the creation of the Garden of Eden, where the dimensions of heaven and earth overlapped one another. A place where God could descend from heaven and walk with mankind. A place where the physical and spiritual overlapped. Notably, the tree of life was rooted in the Garden of Eden, providing immortality to humanity until they were removed from the garden because of their sin. As you can see, there is an overlap, where God can visit humans, but he hasn't completely moved into their space. The physical and spiritual are still distinct realms. After the fall of mankind, the first form of paradise was cut off from men. As we read, angels were sent to guard the entrance. The physical and spiritual realms were separated, and they have remained that way up until this very day. But as we speak, paradise in its second form is rapidly being populated. Every Christian who dies in faith today goes straight to this second paradise. And that's all thanks to one very specific and often neglected action done by Jesus. It's not his teaching, it's not his death, and it's not even his resurrection, but something most people gloss over. In between his death and resurrection, Jesus paid a visit to Sheol. As we stated, this place was packed full of every single soul who'd ever lived and died on earth. After bearing the sins of the world and paying for them with his blood, he had some life-changing news to share to those imprisoned spirits. To those by Abraham's side, the faithful in life, he declared that it is finished and opened a pathway between Sheol and paradise for them. In that moment, the souls of all who died in faith travelled from Sheol to paradise in spiritual form. They're yet to receive their new physical bodies and be completely reunited with their creator, but this paradise is nothing to scoff at. think of the second form of paradise like a spiritual restoration of the Garden of Eden, just without the physical overlap. We even see the Tree of Life make a reappearance, a defining feature in all three forms of paradise. But this is not the final form of the realm. The first form was an overlap between the spiritual and physical. The second is a purely spiritual realm, but the third will be a complete merging of the two, something unfathomably awesome that we'll dive into at the end of this video. The fifth dimension is known as the Abyss. This is by far the most unique of the spiritual realms we've discussed so far, because it was created by God with a very specific purpose in mind. It's described as a dark, bottomless pit where the most wicked of demons are imprisoned. If Sheol is a holding cell for humanity, the Abyss is a dungeon for the demonic. Now here's where I started to get confused, because the question I had in my mind was, what determines which demons are cast into the Abyss and which are permitted to stay on the earth? I mean, aren't all of them just as evil as one another? They're demons. They torture people and possess people and all that. Now, this is a bit of a theory, but there's biblical evidence to suggest that the demons sent to the Abyss are uniquely rebellious. As we know from passages like Job 1 and Luke 8, the demons on earth can only act under express permission from God himself. Now, demons have the capacity and desire to wage war and destroy humanity as we know it. But the reason they don't is because the demons know that if they acted without God's permission, they'll be thrown into the Abyss, a place where they are chained in darkness, completely barred from the physical realm, where their days of possessing and tormenting humanity are over. So I had to ask, what crimes could a demon possibly commit that deserve this brutal jail sentence? And why doesn't God lock all of them up in there? They're already torturing and terrorizing his people, so what's the difference between these demons and these demons? Well, there's one story that comes to mind where demons seem to have crossed the line. The creation of the Nephilim in Genesis, where we hear the sons of God slept with the daughters of men and produced offspring. The half-demon, half-human offspring turned out to be somewhat of a superhuman species. Perhaps this is a biblical example of demons who acted beyond the express permission of God, and as a result, they were locked up in the Abyss. They simply didn't have permission from God to sleep with these women. This might explain why demons haven't tried to reproduce with human women ever since. So of all the demons, the worst of the worst are locked up in the Abyss. We can only pray that the security in the Abyss is top tier, because a world where the most vile demons roamed free would be worse than anything the earth has ever seen. Right? Well, sorry to say, but I've got some bad news. Because in the book of Revelation, at the fifth trumpet of judgment, something utterly terrifying happens. One of the demons is described as a fallen star, which we know from scripture is a picture of the angels that followed Satan in his fall. His name was Abaddon in Hebrew, Apollyon in Greek, and Destroyer in English. His name is so awesome in not one, not two, but 3 different languages. He is established as king over the most wicked demons in the Abyss, dubbed the Angel of the Abyss. And after the 5th trumpet is sounded, he's given the keys to the shaft of the Abyss. With it, he opens the demonic dungeon, and thick smoke pours out. Smoke like that from a gigantic furnace. The smoke blocked out the sun and sky, and from the smoke came hordes of imprisoned demons. They formed up like waves of locusts. When the locusts were sent upon the Egyptians, they were told to devour every green plant they could. But this time, the locusts are commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant, but only the people who aren't sealed by God on their foreheads. They weren't allowed to kill, but they were given power to torture rebellious mankind for 5 months. And these demons are unlike any locusts you've ever seen.
Pittsburgh is built to perform. From America's #1 selling floor jacks to sockets, ratchets, and shop equipment, Pittsburgh delivers the reliability you need at prices that can't be beat. Only at Harbor Freight.
Listen up! Critics and audiences are raving about Masters of the Universe. I have the power! Masters delivers.
Hell yeah.
It's a cosmic blast.
Let him do his thing.
The first great blockbuster of the summer.
Does it feel good?
Masters of the Universe, rated PG-13, now playing in premium large formats in IMAX.
They're described as horses prepared for battle, with golden crowns on their heads, faces that resemble human faces, hair like that of human women, and teeth like that of lions. They wore breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They also had tails with stingers like scorpions, with which they would torment the people for 5 months. All these horrific aberrations are led by their king, Apollyon, the angel of the abyss, one of the fallen stars from heaven. But there's more to the abyss in Revelation than meets the eye. And I'm not ashamed to admit, but I don't completely understand all of it. In Revelation 11, it seems that the beast, who is commonly believed to be the Antichrist, comes out of the abyss. But in Revelation 13, he comes out of the sea. I have no idea how this makes any sense, but I heard some interesting ideas. It's possible that when Apollyon opens the abyss, he lets loose the demonic spirit of the Antichrist, that later takes the form of, or possesses, a man that comes from a country around the Mediterranean Sea, which is why he comes from both the abyss and the sea. But that's a bit of a theory. There is one more event that takes place in the abyss of significance. After the war between Ultra Instinct Christ and the armies of the Unholy Trinity, the beast and the false prophet are restrained, but the brains behind it all is set apart for his own unique punishment. An angel comes down from heaven with a great chain in one hand and the key to the abyss in the other. He seizes Satan and binds him with the chain, throwing him into the abyss for 1,000 years. The abyss was locked and sealed over him, keeping him from deceiving the nations for 1,000 years. But before we get to the next part of Satan's story, we need to look at the final spiritual realms. These two dimensions are considered final destinations. Where all the other realms were temporary holdings or prisons, these two are the only realms that will remain indefinitely. Right now, both of these dimensions are actually empty. So in order to understand how they work, there's an event that occurs before the doors are opened that must happen in order for them to be populated. That event is called the resurrection. Every single human to have ever lived and died will experience a resurrection. No matter where you died or what happened to your physical body, you will be summoned before God. This was such a mystery to me for such a long time, and to be honest, it still is. This resurrection event takes place in 2 parts. Believers and non-believers are both resurrected, just at different times, facing different judgments and going to different destinations. But the experience of each is vastly different from one another. The first resurrection is a joyous occasion. Every single believer is promised a glorified body, like the one Jesus Christ received after his resurrection. God created male and female in his image and considered the creation good. It turns out that this good creation included our bodies. For the first time ever, humans will have their spiritual bodies and their physical bodies completely and miraculously merged together in a perfect, powerful, and complete body. Not only does God wish to redeem our spiritual selves, but also our physical selves. And to do that, he will bring back to life our physical forms in a glorified state. No matter where you died or what happened to your bones, God will recreate every person who ever lived to face him on that day. The second resurrection, though, really sucks. It's where the dead being held in the torment realm of Sheol are finally released, only to be sentenced to a far worse fate. Instead of being resurrected,
The cosmos bore a different face in those ancient days when the earth still trembled beneath the footsteps of beings whose very breath could reshape mountains. Kronos, the youngest of the Titans, ruled from his throne carved from a single block of adamantine. its surface reflecting the swirling mists of primordial chaos that still clung to the edges of creation. His dominion stretched across all realms, from the deepest caverns where the roots of Yggdrasil-like world trees anchored reality itself, to the crystalline peaks where starlight first touched the mortal plane. The Titan King's court functioned with mechanical precision, each deity assigned specific domains that interlocked like the gears of some cosmic mechanism. Oceanus controlled the vast waters that encircled the world, his serpentine form capable of stretching across entire continents, while his wife Tethys governed the springs and rivers that nourished the land. Hyperion commanded the celestial fires, his blazing chariot pulling the sun across the sky with such regularity that mortals could mark their days by his passage. Theia, his consort, wove the silver threads of moonlight that guided travellers through darkness. Kronos himself possessed a terrible beauty, standing nearly twice the height of later Olympian gods. His skin bore the translucent quality of polished marble shot through with veins of gold. His eyes held the depth of eternity, pupils that seemed to contain swirling galaxies, and when he moved, the very air around him shimmered with temporal distortions. The crown upon his brow was forged from meteoric iron and set with stones that pulsed with the heartbeat of time itself. His most distinctive feature remained the massive scythe that never left his side, its curved blade capable of severing not just flesh and bone, but the threads of fate and destiny. The cosmic hierarchy under Kronos operated through absolute authority and predetermined roles. Each Titan governed their assigned sphere without question or deviation, their powers flowing directly from the king's will. Kronos had learned from the chaotic reign of his father Uranus, implementing strict boundaries and clear chains of command. The 100-handed ones served as enforcers, their multiple arms capable of restraining even the most rebellious spirits, while the Cyclops crafted the tools and weapons that maintained divine order. This rigid structure extended to the treatment of mortals, who existed in a state that later generations would remember as the Golden Age. Humanity during Kronos' reign lived in a world unmarked by the harsh realities that would later define their existence. Death held no dominion over them, not because they were immortal, but because their bodies simply did not age or decay. A man might live for thousands of years, his appearance unchanged from the day he reached physical maturity. Children grew to adulthood and remained there, their faces unlined by worry or time. Disease was an unknown concept. The human form maintained perfect health without effort or intervention. Wounds healed within hours, bones mended overnight, and the various ailments that would plague later generations simply could not take hold in bodies that existed in harmony with the cosmic order. The very air they breathed carried healing properties, infused with the essence of Kronos' temporal mastery that kept all things in their ideal state. Pain, both physical and emotional, existed only as the faintest sensation. A cut might register as mild pressure, a fall as gentle contact with the earth. Grief, anger, and despair were emotions so diluted that humans experienced them more as passing clouds across the mind, rather than the devastating storms they would later become. Love existed, but as a warm, constant glow rather than the consuming passion that would drive future generations to both greatness and destruction. The earth itself provided for humanity's every need without labour or cultivation. Fruit trees bore their bounty year-round, their branches bending low to offer sustenance to any who approached. Grains grew wild in vast fields, their stalks heavy with seeds that could be harvested by simply walking through them. Rivers ran with water so pure it could sustain life indefinitely, while the ground yielded precious metals and stones with no more effort than reaching into soft soil. Humans during this age possessed a childlike innocence that came not from ignorance but from the absence of suffering. They understood their place in the cosmic order and accepted it without question. Their settlements resembled gardens more than cities, with dwellings that seemed to grow from the earth itself rather than being constructed. These structures adapted to their inhabitants' needs, expanding or contracting as families grew or diminished, always maintaining perfect comfort regardless of external conditions. The relationship between mortals and the divine remained distant but benevolent. Kronos
Check 1 2. Hello. Check. Can you hear me? Check 1 2. Hello. Check. Can you hear me? Damn. I was muted the whole time.
viewed humanity as one might regard a well-tended garden, pleasant to observe but requiring minimal direct intervention. The Titans occasionally walked among mortals, their presence bringing great joy but no worship or supplication. Humans recognized their divine nature but felt no compulsion to build temples or offer sacrifices, as their needs were already met and their existence secure. This golden equilibrium persisted for eons, with each day flowing seamlessly into the next in an endless cycle of contentment. The seasons changed with gentle transitions, weather patterns followed predictable courses, and the very cosmos seemed to hum with satisfaction at its own perfect order. Yet within this stability, forces were already stirring that would ultimately shatter the Titan's carefully constructed world. Prometheus, son of the Titan Iapetus, possessed a nature that set him apart from his divine kindred. Where other Titans accepted their assigned roles and domains, Prometheus harboured an insatiable curiosity about the mechanisms underlying creation. His tall, lean frame moved with the fluid grace of quicksilver, and his features bore an almost mortal quality that made him appear more approachable than his imposing relatives. His eyes held a peculiar intensity, not the cosmic depth of Kronos, but the sharp focus of one who saw beyond surface appearances to the hidden workings beneath. Unlike his fellow Titans, Prometheus spent considerable time observing humanity, studying their simple lives with the attention of a scholar examining a fascinating text. He noticed details that others overlooked, the way humans adapted to challenges, their capacity for innovation even within their limited circumstances, and most importantly, their potential for growth that remained unrealized under the current cosmic order. The theft of fire from Mount Olympus required careful planning and precise timing. The sacred flame burned eternally in the Hall of the Gods, tended by specially appointed spirits who never left their posts. This was not ordinary fire, but the primordial essence of creation itself, the same energy that had sparked the first stars and breathed life into the cosmos. It appeared as a column of brilliant white light that shifted through every colour imaginable, its heat capable of forging new realities while its light could illuminate the deepest mysteries of existence. Prometheus approached the sacred hearth during the changing of the celestial guard, when the attention of the divine watchers turned briefly to other duties. He carried with him a hollow reed from the banks of the river Styx, its interior lined with a material that could contain divine essence without being consumed. The moment his fingers closed around a portion of the sacred flame, reality itself seemed to shudder, as if recognizing that a fundamental law had been violated. The impact of divine fire on human civilization was immediate and transformative. The flame that Prometheus delivered burned differently from any earthly fire. It required no fuel to sustain itself, produced no smoke, and generated heat that could be precisely controlled by the user's will and intention. More importantly, it carried within itself the spark of creative potential that had previously been the exclusive domain of the gods. Humans who encountered this fire found their minds suddenly expanded, capable of grasping concepts that had been beyond their reach. They began to understand the principles underlying natural phenomena, to see patterns in the movement of stars and seasons that revealed deeper truths about the cosmos. The fire awakened dormant capabilities within human consciousness, allowing them to manipulate matter and energy in ways that approached divine power. The first tools created with divine fire surpassed anything that had existed before. Metal could be shaped not just through heating and hammering, but through direct application of will channeled through the flame. Weapons emerged that could cut through stone as easily as flesh, while implements appeared that could channel and direct natural forces. Architecture evolved rapidly as humans learned to fuse materials at the molecular level, creating structures of unprecedented strength and beauty. Knowledge itself became a tangible force that could be stored, transferred, and manipulated. Humans developed systems of writing that captured not just words, but the essence of ideas, allowing wisdom to be preserved and built upon across generations. Mathematics emerged as a language capable of describing the fundamental structures of reality, while early sciences began to unlock the secrets of matter and energy that had previously been divine mysteries. Zeus, newly ascended to power after his successful rebellion against Kronos, watched these developments with growing alarm from his throne atop Mount Olympus. The young god-king possessed a different temperament than his Titan predecessor. Where Kronos had ruled through established order and cosmic law, Zeus governed through personal will and divine authority. His appearance reflected this difference. Where Kronos had been marble-pale and ethereal, Zeus radiated raw power through bronze-tanned skin and muscles that seemed to contain barely restrained lightning. The new king of the gods had initially viewed humanity with benign indifference, seeing them as harmless creatures whose simple existence posed no threat to divine supremacy. The theft of fire changed this perspective entirely. Zeus recognized that Prometheus had not merely stolen a tool, but had fundamentally altered the balance of power between gods and mortals. The divine flame carried within it the potential for humans to eventually challenge the gods themselves, given sufficient time and development. Zeus's resentment toward Prometheus stemmed from more than simple theft. The Titan's action represented a challenge to the new cosmic order that Zeus was establishing. Where Kronos had ruled through predetermined hierarchy, Zeus sought to govern through personal relationships and individual loyalty. Prometheus's defiance suggested that the new king's authority could be questioned and circumvented, setting a dangerous precedent for other divine beings who might harbor their own rebellious thoughts. The rapid advancement of human civilization under the influence of divine fire confirmed Zeus's worst fears. Within a relatively short span, humans had progressed from simple gatherers to sophisticated builders and thinkers. Their cities began to rival divine architecture, their tools approached divine craftsmanship, and their understanding of cosmic principles grew daily. Most troubling of all, they had begun to question their place in the cosmic order, no longer content to accept divine authority without understanding its foundations. The marble floors of Mount
Hey there. Tonight, we're leaving behind the bright halls of Olympus and the crashing waves of Poseidon's seas, and instead descending somewhere quieter. Past the rivers, past the caverns, into a realm where shadows linger and time itself seems to hold its breath. This is the story of Hades, the god of the underworld, keeper of the dead, ruler of hidden wealth, and brother to Zeus and Poseidon. Though often feared, he was not a monster, but a king whose domain touched every life in the end. If this kind of storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it actually brings you punished arrogance with fitting consequence, not with fiery rage, but with quiet inevitability. To mortals, this made him both frightening and strangely admirable. He was not unpredictable. He was not reckless. He ruled firmly and with rules that did not bend easily. In a pantheon full of caprice and whim, there was something almost comforting in his constancy.
Check 1 2.
Death, after all, is consistent.
Check 1 2.
It does not play favourites.
Check
It does
1
not
2.
arrive in fits of temper. It comes when it comes.
Check 1 2. 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 Hello. Hear me. Check. Check 1 2. Check.
And it comes for
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
all. Hades embodied that truth. The Greeks reflected this in their customs. Funerary rites were not optional. The unburied dead, it was believed, wandered at the edges of his realm, unable to cross the river and find rest. This is why in Homer's Iliad, Such care is taken with funeral pyres, why in Sophocles' Antigone, the heroine insists on burying her brother despite the king's decree. These stories are not about defiance alone. They are about honouring the laws of death, laws older than any mortal throne. Hades himself might never appear on stage, but his presence enforces the rules.
Hey, did you know you might get a big cash payout if you were in a car accident up to 1 year ago? Even
Imagine a book so dangerous that for centuries
You guys like this?
it was locked away from the public. A book that kings feared, that priests burned, that scholars whispered about in secret. A book that claimed to hold the keys to commanding 72 supernatural beings. Beings that could grant you wealth, knowledge, power, and the deepest secrets of the universe. That book exists, and today we are opening it. Welcome back. Today we are
Yes,
diving
sir.
into one of the most mysterious, most controversial, and most misunderstood books in all of human history, the Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as the Lemegeton. Now,
Have you
before
guys ever
think
read
it's
this
just
book?
another dark occult book filled with scary rituals, stop, because what this book actually contains will surprise you. Beneath the symbols, the demons, and the ancient Latin words lies something deeply human, something that speaks directly to your fears, your desires, your struggles, and most importantly, your power. This is not just a book about demons, this is a book about you, about the invisible forces that control your decisions every single day, about the battles happening inside your mind that you don't even realize you're fighting, about why you sometimes feel an uncontrollable urge to be lazy, to lie, to give up, and how ancient wisdom, dressed in the language of spirits and angels, actually mapped out these inner demons thousands of years before modern psychology ever existed. By the time you finish watching this video, you will understand why this book was considered too powerful for ordinary people. You will
Yep.
see the hidden psychological wisdom buried inside centuries-old mysticism.
What's your guys' favorite thing about?
And you will walk away with real, practical lessons, tools you can apply today in your everyday life to take back control of your mind, your habits, and your destiny. So, if you've ever felt like something was holding you back, if you've ever wondered why you keep repeating the same mistakes, or if you've simply been curious about one of the most forbidden books ever written, then stay with me. Because this journey is just getting started. Let's open the Lesser Key of Solomon. Part 1. What is the Lesser Key of Solomon? History and origin. There are books that teach you. There are books that inspire you. And then there are books that haunt you. Books that carry the weight of centuries. Books that have been buried, burned, and banned. Yet somehow they always find their way back into the hands of those who seek the truth. The Lesser Key of Solomon is exactly that kind of book. And to truly understand what this book is, we need to go back, way back, to a time when the line between science and sorcery didn't exist, when the most brilliant minds in the world believed that the universe was alive, filled with invisible forces, spirits, and powers that could be understood, communicated with, and even controlled. The Lesser Key of Solomon, known in Latin as the Lemegeton Claviculum, Salomonis, is a grimoire, which is simply an old word for a book of magic. But calling it just a book of magic is like calling the ocean just water. This grimoire is a complete structured system of knowledge. It is divided into 5 distinct sections, each dealing with a different layer of the invisible world, from demons to angels, from spirits of time to divine wisdom itself. It was compiled sometime in the early 17th century, though the knowledge within it is believed to be far, far older, drawing from Jewish mysticism, ancient Babylonian traditions, Greek philosophy, and medieval European occultism. This was not a book written by one man in one night. This was a collection, a carefully assembled archive of esoteric wisdom that had been passed down through secret circles for generations. Now, the name Solomon is not accidental. King Solomon, the legendary ruler described in the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, was considered the wisest man who ever lived. According to ancient tradition, God granted Solomon a gift unlike any other, the ability to communicate with and command spirits. He was said to possess a magical ring, the Ring of Solomon, that gave him power over demons and jinn. He allegedly used these supernatural beings to build his great temple, to gather hidden knowledge, and to govern his kingdom with unmatched wisdom. Whether you believe this literally or symbolically, the idea of Solomon as a master of hidden forces became one of the most powerful archetypes in human history. And so, over centuries, any serious book of esoteric knowledge wanted to carry his name, his authority, his legitimacy. The Lesser Key of Solomon was not the only book attributed to him. There was also the Greater Key of Solomon, another famous grimoire. But the Lesser Key, the
Pretty cool.
Lemegeton, became notorious for one specific reason. Its first and most famous section, the Ars Goetia, which contains a detailed list of 72 demons, their ranks, their powers, their symbols, and the rituals supposedly used to summon and control them. This section alone made the book one of the most feared and forbidden texts in Western history. The church wanted it destroyed.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Governments banned its possession, and yet handwritten copies were secretly made and passed from scholar to scholar, from occultist to occultist, across centuries and continents. But here is the question that truly matters. Why? Why would intelligent, educated people, kings, philosophers, even clergymen, risk everything to read and preserve this book?
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is based.
The answer tells us something profound about human nature, because what this book really offered was not the ability to summon monsters. What it offered was a map of the hidden forces that shape human behavior, human desire, and human suffering. In a world before psychology, before neuroscience, before self-help books, this was how ancient thinkers tried to explain why humans do the things they do. Why we are drawn to power, why we lie, why we feel rage, lust, despair, and ambition. They gave these forces names, they gave them faces, they drew their symbols, and in doing so, they created something extraordinary, a symbolic language for the inner world of the human mind. Think about it in your own life for a moment. Have you ever felt a force pulling you toward something you know is wrong? Have you ever procrastinated so deeply that it felt almost supernatural, like something outside of you was actively stopping you from moving forward? Have you ever been consumed by jealousy, or greed, or fear, and felt completely powerless against it? The ancient authors of this tradition had a name for each of those forces. They called
You guys ever work?
them demons. And they believed that the first step to overcoming them was to name them, to identify them, to understand their nature, and only then to confront them. This is wisdom that modern psychology rediscovered thousands of years later. Carl Jung called it shadow work. Cognitive behavioral therapists call it identifying cognitive distortions, but the Lemegeton called it demonology. And it did it first. The practical lesson here is one of the most powerful you will ever learn, and it costs you nothing to apply starting today. The next time you feel held back by fear, by laziness, by self-doubt, by anger, don't just say, "I feel bad." Name it. Get specific. Is it the fear of failure? The comfort of procrastination? The poison of comparison? Give it a face. Give it a name. Because once you can see a force clearly, you are no longer completely at its mercy. You move from being a victim of your inner chaos to being an observer of it. And observation, true, honest observation, is always the first step toward control. That is the first and perhaps most important lesson hidden inside this ancient, mysterious book. And we are only just beginning. So now you know what this book is. You know where it came from. You know why it survived centuries of burning and banning. But knowing the history of a map is not the same as reading the map itself. In the next part, we are going to open the most dangerous, most controversial section of this entire book, the Ars Goetia, a section that lists 72 demons by name, by rank, by power, each one representing a force so specific, so precise, that it will make you uncomfortable, not because they are supernatural, but because when you hear their descriptions, you will recognize them. You will see them in the people around you. You may even see them in yourself. 72 demons, 72 mirrors, and every single one of them has something to teach you. Stay with me. Part 2, Ars Goetia, the 72 demons. Who are they? Close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine you are a scholar living in 17th century Europe. The world around you is chaotic. Wars, plagues, political betrayal, religious persecution. You have questions that the church cannot answer. Questions about power, about human nature, about why good people do terrible things and why terrible people seem to prosper. And then someone slides a handwritten manuscript across the table toward you. Its pages are worn, its symbols are strange, and on the very first page it promises something extraordinary, a complete catalogue of the invisible forces that govern human behavior. 72 of them, each with a name, each with a face, each with a specific domain of influence over the human soul. You would read it too. Anyone would. Because the Ars Goetia was not just a list of monsters. It was the ancient world's attempt to explain the unexplainable, and it did so with a level of psychological precision that is genuinely astonishing. The word Goetia comes from the Greek word goetia, meaning sorcery or witchcraft. But the Ars Goetia, which translates simply as the art of sorcery, is far more structured and systematic than that word implies. It is the first and by far the largest section of the Lemegeton, and it presents itself as a manual for summoning, communicating with, and commanding 72 demonic entities. Each demon is described with remarkable detail, their rank in the infernal hierarchy, the number of legions of spirits they command, their physical appearance when summoned, their specific powers and areas of influence, and the magical seal or sigil that represents them. This level of organization is itself fascinating. This was not chaotic superstition. This was a system as methodical and precise as any encyclopedia written today. And that precision is exactly what makes it worth studying. The 72 demons of the Ars Goetia are arranged in a strict hierarchy, much like a military or governmental structure. At the top you have kings, the most powerful entities commanding thousands of lesser spirits. Below them are dukes, princes, marquises, earls, knights, and presidents. Each rank carries specific responsibilities and specific powers. For example, Baal, the very first demon listed, is a king who commands 66 legions of spirits and is said to grant the power of invisibility and cunning.
This records conversations better than taking notes ever could. This is Pocket, an AI note taker that records conversations so you don't have to. I use it for meetings, phone calls, or even doctor's visits. And it captures everything clearly up to 49 feet, even phone calls without even using the speaker. Once a conversation ends, Pocket automatically gives me a summary of what was said, action items on what I need to do next, and key takeaways that I can actually use. So instead of scrambling to take notes or worrying about forgetting important details, I can just be present in the moment and enjoy the conversation. It has 4 days of battery life, 64 gigabytes of storage, supports over 120 languages, and small enough to snap on the back of your phone. As a creator and entrepreneur, this is huge for me. I could turn everyday conversations into content ideas, plans, and follow-ups without doing extra work. No confusion, no missed details, just clarity. So pick up Pocket today.
Go to your room. Mama needs to get her guns.
How long has it been here, Celeste? You need to get over your shit, soldier.
I like it here. It's safe.
Look, I got an emergency meeting. You're up, Mom.
No. It's a burrito. Eat a burrito with your hands. Like this. Quiet. Big bite.
That's my bro.
It's the second time that Black Hawk has gone over us today. They're up to something in the desert north of here. Kind of secret base or some shit.
What you are witnessing here is a human equivalent of a heat-seeking missile. Perfect soldier.
Would you mind telling me what I'm up against tonight?
We're set out to create an ideal combatant to be deployed against the domestic populace. These men are conditioned to kill until they are stopped.
Do you have any practical advice for engagement?
Use your best judgment and cover our tracks.
Don't be afraid. We're your government.
Where are you going?
Go to your room. Get under the bed. Mama needs to get her guns. Cover your ears.
Why?
I'm just gonna say a lot of bad words, okay?
You little bitch!
From Trailer Park, motherfucker!
Paimon is another king, described as extraordinarily obedient to those who summon him correctly, and said to teach all arts, sciences, and secrets of the earth. Asmodeus, one of the most famous names in this list, is a king associated with lust, gambling, and the destruction of marriages, but also, interestingly, with teaching mathematics and making men invisible. The contradictions within each demon's description are not errors. They are invitations to think more deeply. Now here is where this becomes truly fascinating and personally relevant. When you look at the specific powers assigned to each of these 72 demons, you begin to notice something. They don't control random supernatural things, they control human things, specific, recognizable, deeply human experiences and impulses. There is a demon of procrastination, a demon of vanity, a demon of destructive love, a demon of uncontrollable anger, a demon of the desperate need for approval, a demon of intellectual arrogance, a demon of financial greed so consuming that it destroys relationships. Sound familiar? These are not mythological abstractions. These are the forces you wrestle with every single morning when you wake up and decide what kind of person you are going to be today. The ancient authors of the Asgosia looked at the full spectrum of human weakness and shadow, and they named every single piece of it. Consider the Rajay, a marquis described as a demon who causes great battles and makes wounds putrefy. Translated into modern psychological language, this is the force inside us that keeps old arguments alive long after they should be resolved. The part of us that picks at emotional wounds instead of letting them heal. The part that would rather be right than be at peace. How many relationships have been destroyed not by one big betrayal, but by this force? The inability to let go, the compulsion to reopen old wounds. Or consider Forrest, a president said to teach logic and ethics, while simultaneously teaching how to become invisible and find hidden treasures, representing the duality in all of us between our highest intellectual aspirations and our most self-serving impulses. We want wisdom, yes, but we also want advantage. We want to be good, but we also want to win. The Ars Goetia doesn't judge this duality, it simply names it, and naming it is the beginning of wisdom. The practical application of this understanding is something you can begin today, right now, with zero special knowledge or training. Take a piece of paper, or open a notes app on your phone, and write down the 3 biggest struggles you are facing in your life right now. Not external problems, but internal ones. The habits you can't break, the emotions you can't control, the patterns you keep repeating. Now give each one a name. Not a demon's name necessarily, but a name. A specific, honest, unflinching name.
Grimy outdoor messes? 30 Seconds Outdoor Cleaner tackles tough messes like these in seconds. Just spray it on, then rinse away built-up grime. Works fast on siding, brick, furniture, and more. 30 Seconds Outdoor Cleaner. Erase outdoor grime in seconds.
All right, team, listen up. I've changed my mind. I'm gonna add the truffle butter filet mignon.
Oh, that's a great decision, boss.
I'll take the miso chicken. See, that's for me.
I'm gonna do the blackened salmon.
Sweet and sour shrimp for me.
This is my need for external validation. This is my fear of commitment. This is my habit of self-sabotage disguised as perfectionism. This is exactly what the ancient practitioners of Goetia believed was the first and most essential step in dealing with any dark force. Identification. You cannot fight what you refuse to see. You cannot overcome what you have not named. And once you have named it, something extraordinary happens. It loses a fraction of its power over you, not all of it, but enough to create a gap between the impulse and the action. And in that gap, your freedom lives. So now you have met the 72 demons, not as supernatural monsters, but as mirrors. Precise, uncomfortable, extraordinarily accurate mirrors of the forces that live inside every human being. But here is what we haven't talked about yet. Knowing these forces exist is one thing. Understanding exactly how they operate, how they infiltrate your thinking, how they disguise themselves as logic and reason, how they convince you that your worst impulses are actually your best ideas. That is something else entirely. In the next part, we go deeper. We are going to look at the most psychologically rich section of the entire Ars Goetia, the hidden architecture of human shadow.
You guys like it so far? I don't know what you guys are thinking right now.
We will look at specific demons and decode exactly what they represent in your daily life, in your relationships, in your career, and in your mind. And I promise you, by the end of it, you will never look at your own bad habits the same way again. The mirror goes deeper than you think. Part 3, Ars Goetia, Deep Dive, Lessons from the Demons. There is a moment, and almost every human being has experienced it, where you watch yourself do something you know is wrong, and you do it anyway. You watch yourself reach for the phone when you should be working. You watch yourself say
all day, every day
the cruel word you promised yourself you would never say again. You watch yourself choose the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. And in that moment, there is a strange, almost detached feeling, like you are a passenger in your own body, watching a driver you don't fully recognize take the wheel. Ancient traditions had a very specific explanation for this experience. They called it demonic influence. Modern psychology calls it being hijacked by your unconscious mind. The name doesn't matter. The experience is universal, and the Ars Goetia, in its strange and symbolic language, mapped this experience with a level of detail that should not be possible for a book written 400 years ago. Let us begin with one of the most powerful and most misunderstood demons in the entire Goetia, Asmodeus.
You guys listening?
In the text,
imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI.
In the text, Asmodeus is described as a king of tremendous power, associated with lust, excess, and the destruction of order. He is said to cause men to become consumed by desire to the point where they lose all reason, all restraint, all long-term thinking. Now strip away the supernatural language and ask yourself, have you ever been so consumed by a want, a craving, a desire, that you completely abandoned your values to pursue it? Not just physical desire, but the desire for status, for revenge, for comfort, for escape.
Highest power. You're trying to get the luxury. Bad days.
That consuming, reason-destroying force that makes you act against your own best interests. That is what Asmodeus represents. And the Goetia's teaching on how to deal with him is not to suppress desire. It is to master it, to look at the desire clearly, to understand what it is truly asking for underneath the surface, and to find a way to honor the legitimate need while refusing to be destroyed by the compulsive craving. This is the difference between a person who uses food for nourishment and one who uses it to numb emotional pain. Same biological drive, completely different relationship with the Force. Now consider Belphegor, a demon associated with sloth, with laziness, with the seductive comfort of inaction. In medieval imagery, Belphegor was often depicted on a toilet, which might seem absurd until you understand the symbolism. He represents the force that keeps you stuck in your comfort zone, the voice that says, tomorrow, later, when the time is right, when I feel ready. He is the architect of the almost started project, the half-written book, the business idea that never left the notebook. And here is what makes Belphegor genuinely dangerous. He never comes to you dressed as laziness. He comes dressed as wisdom. He whispers things like, you should plan more before you begin, or you don't want to embarrass yourself by starting before you're ready, or rest now.
See, like these two demons right here, two main ones so far that up out of it, like the two that have showed up so far. These are like the main two that a lot of people.
You've earned it. He makes procrastination feel responsible. He makes avoidance feel like strategy.
I personally, everyone.
The practical lesson here is to develop what we might call a Belphegor alarm, a personal warning system that triggers whenever you find yourself feeling unusually comfortable about not doing something important. Comfort around inaction is almost always a signal that something needs your attention, not your rest. Then there is Mammon, the demon of greed, of the insatiable hunger for wealth and material accumulation. But what makes Mammon fascinating is not the obvious greed. It is the subtle greed, the kind that doesn't look like greed at all. Mammon is present when you measure your self-worth by your bank account, when you feel a quiet contempt for people who have less than you, and a quiet anxiety around people who have more. When you sacrifice genuine human connection, time with your children, presence in your relationships, care for your own health, at the altar of financial accumulation. Mammon's greatest trick is convincing you that you are being responsible, being ambitious, being a good provider, while quietly hollowing out every relationship and experience that actually makes life worth living. The lesson from Mammon.
See, this demon, I deal with this demon too. Every single one of these things they've talked about so far, these are like literally the human sins of humans that must see. Like the darkest side of everyone. There are aspects of every single human being. But these are like the worst parts of us that we need to get over so we can't evolve to the person that we
is not that money is evil. It is that when the pursuit of money becomes the organizing principle of your identity, you have handed control of your life to a force that will never be satisfied. Enough is never enough for Mammon. And so the daily practice here is simple but demanding. Regularly ask yourself, am I choosing this because it genuinely serves my life, or am I choosing it because Mammon is driving? Let us look at one more. Leviathan, the great serpent of chaos, associated with envy, with the destructive resentment of other people's success. Leviathan does not simply make you want what others have. Leviathan makes you want them to not have it. This is the subtlest and perhaps most socially destructive of all the forces in the Goetia. It is the force behind the cutting remark disguised as a joke, behind the friend who subtly undermines your confidence right before your big moment, behind the colleague who withholds information that could help you succeed, behind the anonymous online hatred directed at people whose only crime is being visible and successful. Leviathan is everywhere in modern culture, and social media has given him more power than he has ever had in human history. The antidote that ancient wisdom prescribed for Leviathan is radical and counterintuitive. It is not suppression of envy, but transmutation of it. When you feel that sharp, uncomfortable sting of someone else's success, instead of letting it curdle into resentment, you ask, what is this feeling telling me about what I truly want? Envy, honestly examined, is a compass. It points directly at your own unacknowledged desires. Follow the compass instead of feeding the serpent. The overarching practical framework from this entire section of the Ars Goetia can be summarized in 3 steps that you can apply to any shadow force you encounter in yourself. First, witness without judgment.
EVE Online is a vast universe.
So. What do you guys think so far?
When you notice a dark impulse rising, don't immediately shame yourself. Simply observe it. I notice I'm feeling envious right now. I notice I am craving escape right now. Second, name the demon specifically. Not just I feel bad, but this is Belphegor talking. This is my avoidance disguised as wisdom. The more specific the identification, the less power the force holds. Third, ask what it truly wants. Beneath every destructive impulse is a legitimate human need that is being expressed in a destructive way. Asmodeus wants connection and pleasure. Find a healthy channel. Belphegor wants rest and safety. Honor that need without surrendering your growth. Mammon wants security. Build it without sacrificing your humanity. This is not weakness. This is the most sophisticated form of self-mastery that exists. And it was encoded in a forbidden book 400 years ago, waiting for someone willing to look past the symbols and read the truth underneath. So we have journeyed deep into the Ars Goetia. We have named the demons, decoded their symbolism, and extracted real, usable wisdom from one of history's most forbidden texts. But the Lemegeton does not end with the Goetia, not even close. Because beyond the 72 demons, beyond the darkness and the shadow, this book speaks of something else entirely. Something that exists on the other side of the spectrum. In the next part, we enter the world of the Ars Theurgia Goetia, a realm not of demons, but of spirits tied to direction, to movement, to the invisible architecture of the world around you, and what it reveals about how the space you occupy, the direction you face, and the environment you choose will fundamentally change how you think about where you live, where you work, and where you are heading in life. The compass...
Guys, give a like, a thumbs up, and make sure you guys follow and subscribe.
This is about to point somewhere unexpected. Part 4. Ars Theurgia Goetia, Spirits of Direction and the Architecture of Your Environment. There is an old question that philosophers, architects, mystics, and psychologists have all asked in different ways, across different centuries, in different languages. And it is this: does the space...
You guys, we're going to make some music in a minute, so we're about to up and do live when actually, I'll wait 6 minutes. I'll reset the live at
the around you shape the person you become, not just physically, not just practically, but deeply, fundamentally, at the level of your thoughts, your decisions, your energy, your ambition, your peace of mind. Today, modern environmental psychology answers this question with a clear and emphatic yes. The design of your room affects your mood. The view from your window affects your creativity. The people who surround you affect your beliefs about what is possible. The direction you face when you work, when you sleep, when you think, all of it matters more than most people realize. And 400 years ago, the second section of the Lemegeton, the Ars Theurgia Goetia, was already saying exactly this. In its own symbolic, mystical language, it was mapping the invisible forces embedded in direction, space, and environment. And what it reveals is far more practically useful than its strange, archaic surface might suggest. The Ars Theurgia Goetia, which translates roughly as the art of divine and demonic working, is a significant departure from the Ars Goetia that came before it. Where the Goetia dealt with 72 demons arranged in a strict infernal hierarchy, the Theurgia Goetia deals with a different class of spirits entirely. These are beings described as neither purely good nor purely evil. They occupy a middle space, a liminal territory between darkness and light. The text calls them aerial spirits, entities associated with the 4 cardinal directions and the spaces between them: north, south, east, west, and the 8 directions that lie between them. Each direction has a presiding spirit, a court of lesser spirits beneath it, and a specific domain of influence over the material and psychological world.
A man who constantly chases sexual stimulation is avoiding his real life. He wants success, but every time things start going...
The text goes into extraordinary detail about how these directional spirits interact with human beings, how they can be invoked, what conditions they favor, and what kind of influence they exert over the minds and circumstances of those who exist within their sphere. Now, to understand why this is genuinely fascinating, you need to understand the worldview that produced it. The authors of the Lemegeton believed that the world was not a random mechanical place. They believed it was alive, saturated with invisible forces and influences that operated according to specific, learnable rules. Direction was not neutral. North was not simply a point on a compass. It carried specific energetic qualities, specific associations, specific effects on human consciousness. East was the direction of beginnings, of sunrise, of new energy entering the world. West was the direction of endings, of reflection, of things passing away. South was associated with heat, with passion, with the full burning force of active life. North was associated with depth, with mystery, with the hidden and the subterranean. And within each direction, specific spirits presided, spirits whose nature reflected the qualities of their directional home. This is not random superstition. This is a sophisticated symbolic map of how context shapes consciousness. Consider the spirit Carnesiel, described in the Theurgia Goetia as the Emperor of the East, a being of tremendous power associated with new beginnings, with clarity of vision, and with the kind of energy that initiates great works. His court of spirits is said to be most active in the early hours of the morning, when the sun rises in the east and new energy floods the world. Strip away the supernatural framing, and what you find is a profound truth about human productivity and psychology. The morning hours, particularly those aligned with the rising sun, are neurologically and psychologically the most powerful hours of the day for focused, creative, ambitious work. Cortisol levels are naturally elevated. Willpower reserves are at their peak. Distractions are at their minimum. The ancient practitioners who worked with Carnesiel were, in effect, optimizing their environment and timing for maximum effectiveness. They called it invoking an Eastern spirit. We call it morning routine optimization. The wisdom is identical. Then there is the presiding spirit of the North, associated in the Theurgia Goetia with depth, with hidden knowledge, with the kind of slow, patient underground work that eventually produces extraordinary results. The northern spirits are described as difficult to invoke. They require patience, silence, and sustained effort before they respond. This maps beautifully onto what we now understand about deep work, about expertise development, about the kind of knowledge that cannot be rushed or hacked. The North, in this symbolic system, represents the long game. It represents the person who spends years mastering a craft in relative obscurity before emerging with something genuinely remarkable. It represents the investment that compounds slowly and then, suddenly, explosively. The lesson here is one that modern culture desperately needs to hear. Not everything valuable announces itself quickly. Some of the most important work of your life will look like nothing from the outside for a very long time. Honor the northern spirits. Do the hidden.
All right, we're about to